where we are and to get down on the floor and be away from the windows. It seems as if the situation has stabilized in this area, but just for precaution's sake, we're just going to continue for this next hour as we have been broadcasting. I'm joined by Hala Garani and Ben Wiedemann. We have correspondents still fanned out throughout the region. Ivan Watson is in Tahrir Square, in Liberation Square. Arwa Damon is also joining us from that area, and John King continues to be with us in Washington, and Dr. Fawad Ajami, professor at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. We're trying to bring you as many different perspectives as possible. We've been witnessing fire over the course of these early morning hours, and it is now 6 a.m. here in Cairo, 1 hour till the curfew lifts, and there is no sign, no indication that the violence will stop anytime soon. Pro-Mubarak forces will be able to regroup, replenish their supplies, their weaponry, and their numbers if the Egyptian military chooses to allow them to move toward the square. Do you have any sense, Ben, of what may happen in the hours ahead?
It's not at all clear, Anderson, because this whole situation is completely new to everybody. Let's not forget that this only began on 25th of January, and we've seen this country just go from white to black in so little time that it's really difficult to understand where this is going.
We've just gotten a report from El Arabiya, which is reporting 4 killed in new clashes in the square. I assume they're talking about by the Egyptian Museum. 13 wounded. These are new numbers that we are hearing. 4 newly dead, according to El Arabiya, which is citing what they say is a medical volunteer on the scene. 13 wounded. Our Ivan Watson, who is live now in the square, has been seeing, and in our last hour, if you were listening, has been seeing newly wounded people being brought back from what is essentially the front line of this pitched battle by the Egyptian Museum. Ivan, are you still seeing wounded? Are you seeing what El Arabiya is reporting?
I haven't seen an ambulance come through in a while, and many of the people who are circulating here are bandaged, are wearing bloody bandages and slings. And perhaps one of the strangest things is that some of them have made these makeshift helmets out of pieces of cardboard that they've tied to their heads, I guess, in an effort to try to protect themselves during the running street battles when they were hurling stones at each other. Something I'd never quite seen before.
If you're just joining us now at the top of the hour, I also want to read you a tweet from the U.S. State Department, an advisory to Americans in Cairo or in Egypt. It says, U.S. citizens wishing to depart Egypt on U.S. government flights should proceed to airport as soon as possible after the morning end of curfew. They're telling Americans who want to get out of Egypt to proceed to the airport as soon as possible after curfew, which is in 1 hour, to try to get on U.S. government flights. U.S. government started offering flights, Hala. It was on Monday that the first flights were offered. They got about 1,000 people out after the first day. The numbers dropped to about 500 the next day because of traffic problems with all the demonstrators. But clearly, this is an urgent message. This is a much more direct message than we have heard.
Well, after the developments today, the State Department is telling U.S. citizens basically this has become a very dangerous situation. We've seen it not just in Tahrir Square, in some cases spilling out of Tahrir Square. The big fear, of course, will it remain contained in that epicenter area, or will it kind of spill over into other sections of the Egyptian capital? And you were mentioning the military not intervening and not stepping in when there was clear danger directed against sort of ordinary people in the square. But it's not just the fact that they're not intervening, it's the fact that the military presence itself is tiny considering the level of danger and the thousands and thousands of people. You have 1 or 2 tanks here, 1 or 2 tanks there. But Ben was talking about how when you have 100 protesters, you might have thousands of riot police to control them. So it is also a numbers game.
Arwa Damon, you're joining us now for the first time in this broadcast tonight. You and I were speaking earlier. You had talked to some people who were watching these protests and watching the violence. What kind of an impact do you think these images are going to have on Egyptians, on ones who weren't necessarily at the square today or who aren't on one side or the other?
You know, Anderson, even before the violence broke out today, Egyptians that we were talking to were saying that they could hardly recognize their own capital anymore. Life had basically come to a standstill. They could hardly believe that a group of demonstrators, no matter what their side, could potentially threaten the regime of President Mubarak. Today, as I was speaking to a number of Egyptians, ironically in a social club, they were there either looking for a sense of normalcy or just to catch up with friends before they themselves headed down to the demonstration site. But as we were talking, word was beginning to trickle in about these clashes turning even more violent, and they were shocked, horrified, and terrified. One woman was saying that she supported the demonstrators at first, then she felt that the president's concessions were enough, but now that these protests had turned violent, and she said she blamed the president for this, now that the protests have turned violent, she was standing staunchly with the anti-government demonstrators. Another woman I spoke to said something very interesting. She has a 19-year-old son, and she said, you know what, to be honest, this is our fault. This is my generation's fault. We gave up good governance and accepted corruption in the name of stability. And now it is my son, his generation, all the youth that have been dying out there that are paying the price for my generation's decision to stay silent.
I want to show you some of the most dramatic developments that we have seen over the last, frankly, I'm not sure how many hours it is that this has been going on for, certainly more than 12 that we've been reporting on it. But just some of what we have witnessed today throughout the day, a sort of a compilation. Take a look.
We found something here that we haven't seen a lot of before. This is a pro-Mubarak demonstration, which is also happening in downtown Cairo.
We are seeing something in the streets of Cairo that we haven't necessarily seen over the past week of protests. This time we are seeing clashes.
The Egyptian museum is behind me. That is now kind of ground zero for the confrontation between the pro-Mubarak forces and the anti-Mubarak forces.
I've never really seen anything like it. There are hundreds of people below me in the square engaging in a vicious street battle right now, throwing rocks at each other.
They have knives. There are clubs. There's a big roar now from the crowd. Oh, look at this. This is really bad. This is going to get ugly. The flashpoint right now is right in front of the Egyptian Museum, and that's where I was just about 15 minutes ago. We were trying to make our way to kind of the no man's land between the two groups. We never got that far.
Hey, I'm taking pictures. Been hit now like 10 times.
We were set upon by pro-Mubarak supporters, punching us in the head, attacking my producer, Marianne Fox. My cameraman as well, trying to grab his camera, trying to break his camera. We realized the situation would get very bad very quickly.
This is crazy, man. This is crazy, man.
Out of nowhere, it seemed, demonstrators on camelback and horseback started charging in. At that point, there was a rush of people in the other direction. I got caught in it.
Okay, I'm a little bit shaken because I was just shoved out of the way there. This is just a completely surreal experience.
We're right off Tahrir Square at what is a mosque that a few days ago was turned into a makeshift field hospital for people wounded in clashes and protests and whatnot.
For our freedom! This is Hosni Mubarak! That's what he do. He released the condemned. He fights us for our democracy. We will die for our freedom!
We're seeing now just one Molotov cocktail after another being fired. So clearly someone or a group of people have brought a large amount of incendiary devices, because up until now we've only seen occasional Molotov cocktails. This is now one after the other, and I can tell you, people in the crowd inside the square, the anti-Mubarak protesters, I'm not seeing any Molotov cocktails being thrown back. I think they are trapped in the square.
Well, I think what we're seeing, Suzanne, is really sort of a government-sanctioned lynch mob going after the protesters in Tahrir Square.
Some of the most remarkable moments from a day in which it seemed every hour it just got more horrific, what all of us were witnessing. We're going to continue our coverage. We're going to take a short break. We've got a lot of people standing by, a lot of images to show you, and a lot of analysis. We'll be right back.